The massive command ship Eternal Dominance hung in the void like a metallic predator. Its hull stretched for kilometers, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Inside the war room, Admiral Kang Miho stood before a holographic display showing 3 distant star systems. Each system glowed with a soft blue light, marking human colonies that had grown too bold for the hegemony's liking. 50 years, Admiral Kang muttered, his scaled hands clasped behind his back. 50 years since these humans first crawled out of their little solar system, and already they think they own half the galaxy. The other admirals around the table nodded in agreement. General Thex, a towering creature with 6 arms and compound eyes, clicked his mandibles in annoyance. They expand too quickly. They take systems we have marked for ourselves. They refuse to pay proper tribute. Worse, added Admiral Zorith, her serpentine head swaying as she spoke, they actually fight back when we try to claim what is rightfully ours. Lesser species should know their place. Admiral Kang touched the hologram and the 3 human worlds grew larger. New Terra appeared first, a beautiful blue and green world with sprawling cities and orbital platforms. Next came Kepler Station, a massive ring-shaped habitat spinning slowly in space around a red dwarf star. Finally, Harvest Prime materialized, showing golden fields that stretched across entire continents, feeding dozens of human colonies. These 3 targets will send the perfect message, Admiral Kang announced. New Terra is their newest major colony full of families and children. Kepler Station represents their engineering pride, they think it cannot be destroyed. And Harvest Prime feeds half their outer colonies. Strike all 3 simultaneously, and the humans will understand that the Vortak hegemony is not to be challenged. The war room fell silent except for the gentle hum of the ship's engines. The hegemony had ruled this part of the galaxy for over 2,000 years. 12 different alien species had joined together under Vortak leadership, sharing technology and resources. They had seen countless younger races try to establish themselves among the stars. Most learned to submit peacefully. Those who refused were crushed. What of their military response? Asked General Thex. The humans have shown surprising skill in their few battles. Admiral Kang laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the metal walls. Their entire fleet consists of perhaps 200 ships. We are bringing 3,000. Their weapons are crude chemical explosives and simple energy beams. Our plasma cannons can melt their hulls from 1,000 kilometers away. This will not be a battle, General. This will be an education. The attack plan was elegant in its simplicity. 3 separate fleets would jump to hyperspace simultaneously, emerging in each target system at exactly the same moment. The humans would have no time to warn each other or coordinate a defense. Orbital bombardment platforms would be deployed first, targeting major population centers. Ground forces would follow to mop up any survivors and secure valuable resources. Begin the countdown, Admiral Kang ordered. On New Terra, Maria Santos was teaching her morning kindergarten class when the sky caught fire. The children had been learning about colors, holding up bright drawings of their families. Through the classroom window, she saw the first hegemony ships appear like dark stars against the blue sky. Then the bombardment began. The plasma beams struck the capital city first. Buildings that had stood for decades melted like ice under a flame. The shockwave shattered windows across the entire continent. Maria threw herself over the children as debris rained from the ceiling, her last thought being how their innocent drawings were scattered across the floor like fallen leaves. At Kepler Station, Engineer Kim Do-hyun was performing routine maintenance on the habitat ring when alarms began screaming throughout the structure. He looked out through the massive transparent aluminum windows and saw the hegemony fleet emerging from hyperspace. The ships were enormous, each one larger than several city blocks. "This is Commander Park," a voice crackled over the intercom. "All civilians to emergency shelters immediately. This is not a drill." But there was nowhere to run. The habitat ring was 10 kilometers in diameter, spinning to create artificial gravity for its 8 million inhabitants. When the hegemony plasma cannons found their mark, entire sections of the ring cracked open like an eggshell. Atmosphere rushed out into space in glittering clouds of ice crystals. Kim watched in horror as thousands of people were sucked into the void, their screams lost in the vacuum. On Harvest Prime, Farmer Lee Myung was checking his wheat fields when the horizon exploded. The golden grain that stretched to the edge of sight burst into flames as orbital bombardment platforms turned the world's breadbasket into an inferno. The smoke rose so thick it blocked out the sun. His daughter called him on the comm unit, her voice shaking with terror. "Papa, the cities are burning. The news says ships are attacking from space. What do we do?" Lee looked at his fields, generations of work reduced to ash in minutes. "We survive, little one," he said quietly. "We remember. And we make sure this never happens again." On Earth, President Lee Yuna stood in the Global Defense Council chambers, watching the reports come in through automated distress beacons. The numbers were staggering. New Terra, 6 million dead. Kepler Station, 8 million dead. Harvest Prime, 3 million dead and climbing. The other council members waited for her orders. Some suggested immediate surrender to prevent further losses. Others demanded a military response despite being vastly outnumbered. President Lee said nothing. She simply watched the footage of burning cities and dying worlds, her face carved from stone. The hegemony had expected screams, pleas, desperate diplomatic messages begging for mercy. Instead, humanity went completely silent. Admiral Park Jin-hoon stood in the command center of Luna Base, watching the final transmission from Harvest Prime fade to static. The elderly officer had seen many battles in his 40 years of service, but nothing had prepared him for this. The automated beacon continued sending data even as the world burned below, casualty reports, damage assessments, and footage that would haunt him forever. His aide, Lieutenant Choi Hannah, approached carefully. She had never seen the Admiral's face so still, so empty of emotion. It was like watching a mountain before an avalanche, everything perfectly calm on the surface while tremendous forces built up underneath. "Sir," she said quietly, "the Security Council is requesting your assessment." Admiral Park did not turn away from the screens. Images flickered past showing hegemony soldiers shooting fleeing families, orbital platforms reducing hospitals to rubble, and transport ships full of children being hunted down like animals. "Tell them," he said in a voice like winter, "that the assessment is complete. The hegemony has shown us exactly who they are." Across the galaxy, the human response began with whispers and shadows. On the hegemony capital world of Vorthak Prime, Ambassador Kim Sora packed her belongings with mechanical precision. Her staff moved through the embassy like ghosts, shredding documents and wiping computer systems clean. "Ambassador," her deputy asked, "should we file a formal protest with the Hegemony Council? Demand an explanation?" Kim Sora sealed the last case and looked out the window at the alien city below. Thousands of hegemony citizens went about their daily lives, unaware that everything was about to change. "No," she said simply. "We are done talking." The embassy went dark that night. By morning, every human diplomat in hegemony space had vanished without explanation, leaving behind empty buildings and confused alien officials who found only silence where once there had been voices. On the trading world of Nexus Station, human merchant Captain Lee Ji-hoon received a coded message while loading cargo. The message was simple: "Come home. Now." He looked at his crew, all human, all with families on the colonies. They understood without words. "Prepare for immediate departure," he announced. "Leave everything that is not essential." "What about our contracts?" asked his first officer. "We have cargo worth millions waiting for delivery." Captain Lee watched hegemony workers unloading human-made goods in the docking bay below. Food, medicine, entertainment systems, and advanced electronics that the aliens had grown dependent on. "The contracts are void," he said. "All of them." Across hundreds of worlds, the same scene played out. Human traders, engineers, doctors, and teachers simply disappeared overnight. They left behind empty apartments with rent paid for months in advance, businesses with full inventory but no operators, and confused alien customers who found their favorite human establishments suddenly abandoned. The hegemony leadership expected panic. They had destroyed 3 human worlds as a lesson, showing their overwhelming power. Surely the humans would respond with desperate diplomatic messages, perhaps even surrender offers. Instead, they received something much more disturbing: absolute silence. Admiral Kang Miho paced his command ship's bridge, growing more agitated by the hour. "What do you mean they are not responding?" he demanded of his communications officer. "Sir, we have sent 17 messages to Earth's government demanding their surrender. No response. We have contacted their remaining colonies. No response. We have even tried to reach their military commanders directly. Nothing." "Perhaps they are planning a counterattack?" suggested General Thex. Admiral Kang studied the tactical displays. Human military forces remained exactly where they had been before the attacks. No mobilization, no fleet movements, no signs of preparation for battle. It was as if the humans had simply stopped. On Earth, President Lee Yuna stood before the Global Defense Council in an emergency session. The room was packed with military leaders, government officials, and colony representatives who had traveled from across human space. The air was thick with grief and rage, but the president's voice cut through it like a blade. The hegemony has taught us a valuable lesson, she began, her words echoing in the silent chamber. They have shown us that they do not see a difference between soldiers and children. That hospitals and schools are legitimate targets in their eyes. That mercy is something they view as weakness. She paused, looking around the room at faces marked by loss and determination. They expect us to beg. To plead for mercy they have already proven they do not possess. Instead, we will show them what humans do when someone threatens our families. In the deep asteroid belts beyond Mars, automated mining platforms received new programming. Instead of extracting common metals for construction, they began seeking rare elements needed for advanced weapons systems. Titanium, beryllium, and exotic materials that most species used only in small quantities. Mining ship Captain Kim Min-soo read the new orders with growing understanding. He had lost a cousin on New Terra and a childhood friend on Kepler Station. The pain was like acid in his chest, but beneath it was something colder and more focused. All shifts are now mandatory, he announced to his crew. We work until the job is done. What job? Asked his chief engineer. Kim looked out at the asteroid field where robotic miners were already adapting to their new purpose. In the distance, massive construction platforms were being assembled, not for building space habitats or commercial vessels, but for something the galaxy had never seen before. The job of making sure this never happens again, he said. Across human space, military supply depots received mysterious shipments. Colony defense forces found advanced weapons appearing in their armories. Research stations that had been studying peaceful applications of technology suddenly shifted to more focused pursuits. And in the silence between the stars, humanity began to remember lessons learned on a violent homeworld where the strong preyed on the weak, and only the most ruthless survived. The hegemony had wanted to teach humans about power. Instead, they were about to learn why humans had clawed their way to the top of their planet's food chain. Admiral Kang Miho stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Another red mark had appeared on the galaxy map, this time marking the destruction of a fuel processing station in the Xerian system. The installation had been heavily defended, surrounded by patrol ships and automated defense platforms. Yet somehow, it had been reduced to expanding clouds of plasma in less than 30 seconds. How many does that make? He asked his intelligence officer, though he already knew the answer would make his head hurt. 47 confirmed attacks in the past 6 months, sir, replied Commander Vex, her tentacles nervously coiling around her data pad. Ammunition factories, fuel depots, shipyards, communication relays, spare parts warehouses. Every single target has been connected to our military operations. Admiral Kang felt a cold weight settling in his stomach. When the attacks first began, his staff had dismissed them as pirate raids or equipment failures. Space was vast and dangerous, ships went missing all the time. But now the pattern was impossible to ignore. The humans were not fighting the war anyone expected them to fight. 3 sectors away, Captain Choi Hannah guided her ship through the void between stars. The silent Vengeance moved like a predator through dark water, its hull covered in materials that absorbed sensor beams and bent light around its edges. From a distance of more than a few kilometers, the destroyer was completely invisible. Target acquired, reported her weapons officer, Lieutenant Park Juno. Hegemony Supply Convoy Grid 77 Alpha. 3 cargo haulers, 2 escort frigates. Choi Hannah studied the tactical display. The convoy was carrying replacement parts for damaged Hegemony warships, components that would take months to manufacture if destroyed. The escort ships were small but well armed, their crews probably expecting another routine supply run. Range to target? She asked. 15,000 kilometers and closing. Missile status? All tubes loaded with plasma warheads. Stealth mode engaged. Captain Choi had been a commercial transport pilot before the war, ferrying supplies between human colonies. She had known families on New Terra, had friends on Kepler Station. The night she learned of their deaths, she had volunteered for the most dangerous assignment the military offered, commanding one of the new ghost ships that emerged from humanity's hidden construction facilities. The Silent Vengeance was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Its engines produced no detectable emissions. Its hull absorbed radar and lidar beams. Its weapons could strike targets from distances that most species considered impossible. The ship was not built for glory or territorial conquest, it was designed for one purpose only: killing efficiently and vanishing without a trace. 10,000 kilometers, reported the navigation officer. All weapons locked on target, confirmed Lieutenant Park. Captain Choi's finger hovered over the firing command. The cargo ships below carried no weapons, but they were feeding the war machine that had murdered millions of innocent humans. The escort frigates had probably participated in the orbital bombardments, or at least supported them. Fire. 6 plasma missiles streaked through space, their engines carefully designed to produce minimal heat signatures. The hegemony escorts had exactly 4 seconds to realize they were under attack before the first warhead struck the lead cargo hauler. The ship's hull cracked open like an egg, spilling its contents into vacuum. The escort frigates spun frantically trying to locate their attacker, but their sensors found only empty space. The second and third cargo ships died in silent explosions of light and debris. One escort managed to get off a few random shots into the darkness before it too was reduced to expanding gases. Targets eliminated, reported Lieutenant Park. No response from enemy forces. Set course for Rendezvous Point 7, Captain Choi ordered. And prepare the next target package. The silent vengeance faded back into the darkness between stars, leaving behind only wreckage and confusion. On the hegemony capital world, Admiral Kong found himself facing increasingly angry representatives from the 12-member species. General Thex, the 6-armed insectoid, clicked his mandibles in agitation as he spoke. "Our ships are dying in the void," he complained. "Our supply lines are in chaos. My people are asking why we started this war against creatures who fight like shadows." Admiral Zorith, the Serpentine delegate, swayed her head in agreement. "The humans do not behave like other species we have conquered. They do not mass their fleets for glorious battle. They do not try to hold territory. They simply kill and vanish." Admiral Kong reviewed the latest reports with growing unease. Human military doctrine was unlike anything in hegemony experience. Instead of protecting their remaining colonies or attempting to retake the destroyed worlds, the humans had chosen to strangle the hegemony war effort through surgical strikes against logistics targets. Every ammunition factory that supplied hegemony weapons had been destroyed. Every fuel depot that powered their ships had been eliminated. Every communication relay that coordinated their forces had gone silent. The main hegemony battle fleets remained untouched and powerful, but they were slowly starving. "How are they finding these targets?" Admiral Kong demanded. "Our supply routes are classified at the highest levels." Commander Vex consulted her data pad nervously. "Intelligence suggests the humans had extensive commercial networks throughout our territory before the war. They may have mapped our infrastructure during decades of peaceful trade." The implications hit Admiral Kong like a physical blow. While the hegemony had seen human merchants as useful but harmless, those same traders had been quietly learning the locations of every critical facility in hegemony space. Every fuel depot visited by human cargo ships. Every communication relay that had transmitted human messages. Every manufacturing center that had sold products to human companies. The humans had not been expanding randomly across the galaxy. They had been preparing for this exact kind of war. In the depths of space, dozens of ships like the Silent Vengeance continued their deadly work. They struck without warning and vanished without trace, each attack carefully planned to inflict maximum damage on the hegemony's ability to sustain military operations. The galaxy was learning that humans did not fight wars the way other species did. They fought to win, using every advantage their violent evolution had taught them. And they were very, very good at it. The Hegemony Council chamber had never seen such chaos. 12 different species shouted at each other in their native languages while Admiral Kong Miho stood at the center, trying to maintain order. The holographic displays around the room showed the devastating truth. After 1 year of war, the mighty hegemony was slowly dying. "Our fuel reserves are at 30%, reported General Thex, his 6 arms gesturing wildly. "Our ammunition factories are gone. Our communication networks are in pieces. How are we supposed to fight a war when we cannot even supply our own ships?" Ambassador Zektar, representing the crystalline Kithara, chimed like broken glass. "My people demand answers. Why did we attack these humans? They were peaceful traders. Now they hunt us like prey animals." Admiral Kong stared at the tactical displays, each red mark representing another facility destroyed by human ghost ships. The pattern was clear and terrifying. The humans had not tried to reclaim their lost worlds or protect their remaining colonies. Instead, they had chosen to slowly strangle the hegemony war machine through surgical strikes that seemed impossible to prevent. "Perhaps," suggested Admiral Zorith carefully, "it is time to consider peace negotiations." The room fell silent. The idea of the mighty hegemony surrendering to a species they had dismissed as primitives was almost unthinkable. But the numbers did not lie. At their current rate of losses, the hegemony would be unable to maintain military operations within 6 months. Deep in the Horsehead Nebula, something impossible was taking shape. Captain Lee Min-soo guided his inspection shuttle through clouds of stellar gas and cosmic dust, marveling at what human engineering had accomplished in just 1 year. Hidden mobile shipyards stretched for kilometers, their automated construction bays working without rest. These were not the graceful exploration vessels or elegant passenger ships that humans had built before the war. These new creations were angular, brutal-looking machines designed for one purpose only: killing as efficiently as possible. They had no windows for viewing stars, no comfortable quarters for long voyages, no provisions for diplomatic missions. Every cubic meter was devoted to weapons, armor, or stealth systems. Construction report, Lee requested from the facility coordinator. 67 new ghost ships completed this month, came the reply. Another 40 under construction. We estimate full fleet replacement within 8 months. Lee nodded grimly. The hegemony believed they had destroyed the human navy in the opening attacks. They had no idea that humanity had been building a completely different kind of fleet in the darkness between stars. Aboard the Silent Vengeance, Captain Choi Hannah received orders that made her pause for the first time in months. Her ship had struck dozens of military targets without mercy, each attack carefully planned to maximize damage to the hegemony war effort. But these new orders were different. "A civilian convoy?" asked Lieutenant Park Juno, reading over her shoulder. "Ma'am, we have never targeted non-combatants." Captain Choi studied the intelligence report. The convoy consisted of 15 passenger ships carrying hegemony civilians fleeing the war zone. Families, children, elderly citizens who had nothing to do with the military attacks on human worlds. For 12 months, human forces had been careful to distinguish between soldiers and innocents. "Ma'am?" Lieutenant Park prompted. "Your orders?" Captain Choi looked around the bridge at her crew. These were people who had lost everything when the hegemony attacked. Her weapons officer had lost his wife on New Terra. Her navigator's parents had died on Kepler Station. Her chief engineer's daughter had been attending school on Harvest Prime when the orbital bombardment began. "Set intercept course," she ordered. "But prepare the communication array, not the weapons." The Silent Vengeance materialized from the void like a nightmare-given form. The hegemony convoy immediately detected the human warship and began broadcasting desperate surrender messages. Their escort ships were small patrol craft, completely outmatched by the destroyer's advanced weapons. But Captain Choi had not come to kill. She had come to deliver a message. "Open a channel to all ships in the convoy," she commanded. "Maximum broadcast power. Ensure every communication system in this sector receives the transmission." The view screen flickered to life, showing not Captain Choi's face but archived footage from the attacks 1 year ago. The images were horrifying: children running from orbital bombardment on New Terra, families dying in the vacuum as Kepler Station's habitat rings cracked apart, farmers burning alive in the fields of Harvest Prime. The footage played for exactly 3 minutes, showing the hegemony forces deliberately targeting hospitals, schools, and refugee ships. When it ended, Captain Choi's voice cut through the silence. "1 year ago, you taught us that civilians are legitimate targets in warfare. You showed us that hospitals and schools and refugee ships are acceptable casualties. You demonstrated that mercy is weakness and that only the strong survive." She paused, letting the words sink in throughout the convoy and across every hegemony communication network that had received the transmission. "We want you to know that we have been excellent students. We have learned your lessons very well. Every ship in this convoy could be reduced to atoms in the next 30 seconds. Every passenger could join the millions of humans your forces murdered. But today we choose mercy." The transmission ended, and the Silent Vengeance simply vanished back into hyperspace, leaving the convoy unharmed but shaken. The message had been received not just by the fleeing civilians, but by every major news network and government leader in hegemony space. The psychological impact was devastating. If human ships could appear anywhere, even in the heart of hegemony territory, then nowhere was truly safe. The civilians in the convoy would return to their worlds carrying stories of human restraint and power. Military commanders would realize that humanity could have been targeting civilian populations all along but had chosen not to. Until now. In the depths of space, other human ships received similar orders. Ghost fleets that had spent a year hunting military targets suddenly appeared near civilian installations, broadcasting the same message before disappearing. The threat was clear: humanity had shown mercy for 12 months, but that mercy could end at any moment. The hegemony finally understood what they were truly fighting. Not desperate refugees or noble defenders, but a species that had learned the rules of survival on a world where only the most ruthless lived to reproduce. and humanity was done playing by anyone else's rules. The Great Hall of Vorthak Prime had hosted thousands of diplomatic meetings over the centuries, but none quite like this one. Admiral Park Jin-hoon walked through doors that had once seemed impregnable, flanked by human guards whose presence sent ripples of unease through the assembled hegemony leadership. The elderly human officer moved with quiet confidence, his weathered face showing no emotion as he approached the negotiating table. Admiral Kang Mi-ho, once the proud commander of the Third Fleet, now sat in disgrace at the far end of the table. His uniform bore no rank insignia, and his scales had lost their lustrous shine. The sight of a human admiral walking freely through the heart of hegemony space was a humiliation he could barely endure. "The terms are simple," Admiral Park announced, placing a data pad on the polished surface. "And they are not negotiable." The Hegemony Council members shifted nervously as they read the document. General Thex's 6 arms trembled as he scanned the requirements. Ambassador Zektar's crystalline form dimmed with each paragraph. The terms were harsh beyond anything they had imagined. "Full reparations for the destroyed worlds," Admiral Park continued, his voice echoing in the silent chamber. "Every family that lost someone, every business that was destroyed, every colony that suffered, all must be compensated. The amount comes to approximately 40% of your combined gross planetary product for the next 20 years. Admiral Zorith hissed in dismay. "Impossible. Our economy cannot sustain such payments." "Then you should have considered that before attacking civilian populations," Admiral Park replied without changing expression. "The second requirement: permanent human observers will be placed in every hegemony military command. Your fleets will not move without our knowledge. Your weapons development will be monitored. Your strategic planning will be supervised." "You are asking us to surrender our sovereignty," protested General Thex. "We are ensuring you never again mistake military strength for moral authority," Admiral Park corrected. "The third requirement: war crimes tribunals for all officers who participated in targeting civilian populations. This includes Admiral Kong and approximately 200 other commanders." The former admiral's face went pale. He had known this moment would come, but hearing it spoken aloud made his stomach twist into knots. "And finally," Admiral Park said, his voice growing colder, "the establishment of what we call the Terran Doctrine. Any species, anywhere in the galaxy, that deliberately targets human civilian populations will face complete systematic destruction of their civilization. Not conquest. Not occupation. Complete dismantlement of everything that makes your society function." The room fell silent except for the gentle hum of air recyclers. The implications were staggering. Humanity was not simply demanding tribute or territory, they were establishing themselves as the enforcers of galactic law regarding civilian protection. "And if we refuse these terms?" asked Admiral Zorith, though her voice suggested she already knew the answer. Admiral Park activated a holographic display showing the current state of hegemony space. Red zones marked areas where human ghost ships had eliminated military infrastructure. Yellow zones showed supply lines that were barely functioning. Green zones, representing fully operational hegemony territory, comprised less than 30% of their former domain. "Your military capabilities are currently at 18% of pre-war levels," Admiral Park explained. "Your ammunition reserves will be exhausted in 4 months. Your fuel supplies in 6 months. We estimate complete military collapse within 8 months, followed by economic breakdown and social chaos. The choice is simple: accept our terms now or watch your civilization slowly die." 3 months later, construction ships arrived at the ruins of New Terra. But these were not ordinary rebuilding efforts. Massive defense platforms began taking shape in orbit, bristling with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. The new cities that rose from the ashes were built like fortresses, their beautiful parks and schools protected by shield generators and automated defense turrets. Captain Kim Do-hyun, who had survived the destruction of Kepler Station, now oversaw the reconstruction as a senior engineer. The new habitat rings were 3 times larger than before, but they were also virtually indestructible. Multiple hulls, emergency shelters every 50 meters, and escape pods that could reach safe jump points within minutes. "Why build it so strong?" asked his young assistant, Park Minji, who had been born after the war. Kim looked out at the memorial garden where names of the 8 million dead were carved into black stone walls. "So this never happens again," he said simply. "So no other children have to watch their homes burn from space." On Harvest Prime, the golden fields grew once more, but now they were watched by orbital defense stations and protected by underground bunkers. Farmer Lee Myong, now an old man, taught his grandchildren how to tend the wheat while explaining why armed guards patrolled the edges of their property. The galaxy learned something important during the war, he told them as they walked between the rows of grain. Humans can be your friends. We can trade with you, work with you, even love you. But if you hurt our families, if you threaten our children, then you will discover that we are very, very good at ending things that threaten us. In the depths of space, ships like the Silent Vengeance continued their eternal patrol. Admiral Choi Hanna, promoted after the war, commanded a fleet of over 300 ghost ships that moved through the darkness between stars. They were invisible, silent, and deadly, a permanent reminder that humanity was watching. The Galactic Assembly had adopted new laws based on what they called the Terran Doctrine. Civilian populations were now protected by treaty, with humanity serving as the enforcement mechanism. No species wanted to test whether the humans were serious about their promises. Former Admiral Kang Miho spent his exile on a remote moon, recording his memoirs for future generations. His final entry had become required reading at military academies across the galaxy. We thought we were fighting primitives who had stumbled into space travel through luck. We believed their rapid expansion was due to desperation and determination. We were wrong about everything. Humans had not stumbled into the galaxy, they had conquered their way out of their solar system, carrying with them millions of years of evolution that had taught them one simple truth. Survival belongs to those willing to do whatever it takes to protect their own. When we showed them that mercy was weakness, they taught us that cruelty was a language they spoke fluently. We started a war to put them in their place. Instead, we learned ours. President Lee Yuna's final speech to the Galactic Assembly was broadcast across 1,000 worlds. Her words became the foundation of interspecies law, carved into monuments and taught to children. Never again will humanity stand alone. Never again will we turn the other cheek. And never again will anyone mistake our desire for peace as an inability to wage war. The galaxy had learned the hard way: never strike human worlds. Some lessons only need to be taught once.